Almost there.
Good. Good. Why don't you use one of these?
No, I'm not checking for updates. No, I'm getting anywhere. I like them all times. I'm not sure that, oh. that's it. How we doing? 4 o'clock yet? Is that clock correct?
1 minute. Or is it 4?
1 minute.
Yeah, 4 o'clock. Get her rolling.
All right. Where's the gavel? You always do that. Let's call this meeting to the Redevelopment Commission to order. Let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance, as we normally do. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looks like everybody's here today. Good.
That's a change.
Yeah. We'll start off with the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. I didn't see any discrepancies, did you guys?
I wasn't here, so I wouldn't know.
Jack, Bill, and I were, I think so. I'll entertain a motion to approve those if you're okay with it.
Motion to approve the minutes. I'll second it.
Okay, a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, new business. Jeremy, declaratory.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of resolutions on today's agenda. A lot of this is what I've talked to you about over the last couple of months. I've had Randy come today to help explain some of it, but he'll go over the resolutions with you. But in general, the first resolution is the discussion we had about combining the northern and central economic development areas into one area. I'll turn it over to him. He can go through the resolution. If you have any questions, we can discuss it.
Welcome, Randy.
Hello, good afternoon. Randy Rompola with Barnes & Thornburg with offices in South Bend. As Jeremy indicated, this first declaratory resolution is for the purpose of combining the northern TIF area with the central development TIF area. And so it does a few things. One, it has 2 expansion areas. One is to include the Danco property, and that's just a separate expansion into the northern area. And then the other expansion area is essentially the territory that's needed to connect the two. I forget, it's what, several hundred
Center
yards?
Street. Yeah, it's on Center Street, or sorry, State Road 15, in between where the current end of top of Center Lake, north side of Center Lake, up to State Road 15.
And so I think we've talked about this, Jeremy and I have talked about this in the past, as we've made amendments to the central area in years past. We've made amendments to the northern area, just given the closeness of the two. And I think if we didn't consolidate now, I think we were going to be making some expansions to the central area to grow a little bit more northward. So at this point, it seemed like it made sense just to combine both of them. A lot of communities have done this for a couple of reasons. One, it makes the administration of the TIF areas and the economic development areas a little bit easier because you have one less area now that's separate and apart to deal with. The second one would be that now with the consolidation, you have greater flexibility with respect to the TIF that's being generated, that you can spend it in either area more easily. You always had the ability to spend TIF where it's in or serving, but the farther you get away from a particular area, it's certainly not in, and it makes the serving sometimes more difficult of an argument to satisfy. So here, consolidating them will allow for greater flexibility going forward into the future to be able to do that. The other thing that this resolution does do, it adds the Danco property to the acquisition list, and that there's another resolution dealing with that in terms of providing an economic incentive to Danco. But that's the other purpose of this amendment. So it does the 2 consolidations, or the consolidation of the 2 areas, and adds the Danco property to the northern area, and also adds that little bit of territory in between to the northern area. And why we have it set up that way, The northern area is an economic development area under the statute. The central area currently is a redevelopment area under the statute, and that's more of an accident of history. When the central area was created many, many years ago, that was the predominant tool that was being used by redevelopment commissions. Economic development areas were not, I think it was in the law then, or maybe it came in a year or two after. I'm trying to remember when the central area was created, but they weren't really used that much. Fast forward to today, more communities are using the economic development area designation because it relates to job creation, job retention, and that is primarily the reason that redevelopment commissions are doing projects around the state. So we aren't changing with respect to the central area and the existing northern area. We're not changing anything with respect to the TIF allocation areas. We're not changing dates. The only thing we're doing is just consolidating them. So instead of having two separate areas, two separate boundaries, we'll now just have one large boundary. So everything that's in the central area will continue to remain. So we're not doing anything with the TIF, the overlapping taxing units, nothing will change. It is really just more of an administrative matter to consolidate them. So I'm happy to answer any questions with respect to that.
Randy, I think you just answered my question about the dates. The dates will all stay the same.
Exactly.
Other than the new area, does it start the clock?
No, that's a good point. The two areas, the Danco, and we're not really adding Danco to do anything with respect to TIF. We're doing it to provide that economic incentive, and to do that it needs to be in. But the area in between that will be designated as a new area, new allocation area, that will have a 25-year life.
25.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Does the term economic development and redevelopment really make any difference when it comes down to bonding or supporting a project?
Not at all. There used to be differences, again, historically, decades ago. I hate to say that, but it makes me sound old. But in an economic development area, redevelopment commissions didn't used to have the power of eminent domain. In redevelopment areas, they did. Today, under current law, redevelopment commission doesn't have any power of eminent domain. That changed some years ago. So that was the one difference. Again, and back, redevelopment used to have a designation, and that's what really turned the tide, where communities didn't want to call their communities blighted, and that was a finding that a commission had to make when designating a redevelopment area. So the redevelopment area language goes all the way back into the 40s and 50s, when there was a huge, I like listening to old-time radio, and sometimes you'll hear on old-time radio on Sirius XM, there'll be commercials about helping your community fight the blight, which is weird to think about. Back then, they were thinking about getting rid of blighted neighborhoods, but that was a real issue, or at least perceived to be a real issue, and that's what the redevelopment statute came out of here in Indiana in the 70s and 80s. It was to fight blighted areas. They took the definition out of blight. They now call it areas needing redevelopment. They gussied it up a little. But by then, most communities have gotten away, as I said, from designating a redevelopment area, and will designate something as an economic development area, because under the statute, again, economic development areas deal with job creation and job retention, doing projects to generate jobs. And so that's the preferred manner of doing projects these days. But back when the central area was declared, way back when, I should have looked, but I think it may have been declared.
90s. Mayor Plank.
Yes, it was around 90, 89, 90,
Yep.
and I think the economic development language was added in the statute around the same time. It was either at that time or just after. So that's largely why the central area back then was declared a redevelopment area. If we were doing it today, brand new, we would be calling it an economic development area, almost assuredly. I think in the last 10 years, I probably declared 3 redevelopment areas for very specific reasons. But everybody uses the economic development language now because it's easier to do projects with in terms of generating jobs and retaining jobs.
Jeremy, with our consolidation with the Eastern TIF several years ago, pretty much moved to one TIF area.
Yeah, the only TIF area, there will be 3 outside TIF areas. It would be the Winona Interurban, and then the 2 residential TIFs.
Right.
Yeah, this will combine the 2 largest ones.
Yeah, I
So
think,
from a financing, from a budgeting, it'll be easier, you'll have the one budget.
Remind me, I think the central expired, like, is it 2040?
Yeah, 2040, I think 2039, 2040, somewhere.
How about the northern, and I know there's different legs.
2030.
Okay,
The original northern expires in 2030, there's a bunch of other sections that roll off like 2 years, 4 years, and then the eastern TIF would roll off a lot, like another 15 years after that.
thank you.
This section that we're using to join the two, the northern and the central, what effect does it have on them? Or,
So the reason we're having this discussion was twofold. One, I needed to bring Danco in. 2, we've had a request for about a year now for a riverfront liquor license in that area. And the only way you can, under the statute, it has to be an economic development area. But there's like 3 other types, but we don't have any of the other types. So the only way we can give them that riverfront license is if we turn it into an economic development area. So in going through this process, it made sense at this time to just say, we'll just combine the 2. Since I had to go up that way anyhow, rather than stopping 3 properties short, we just took them in and created the larger district.
and that's, I should say, that's primarily where we've done expansions of existing redevelopment areas. It's primarily in communities where they just are expanding for purposes of the riverfront liquor license. If we have our druthers, we tend to use, because again, even within the lawyers and the municipal advisors, the economic development area designation is the more preferred route to go these days. So, but as far as those taxpayers in that area, nothing will change. I mean, they'll be just like any other taxpayer. Part of this process, this is the first step, should you adopt the resolution, and I'll just recite it. The next step would be before the Plan Commission next week to approve it, then to the Common Council. It finally would come back before you. I think we have it slated, if it goes forward, at the June meeting. And at that meeting, there's a public hearing. And in advance of that, the Baker Tilly folks will prepare a tax impact statement, and they'll send that to all of the overlapping taxing units. But at this point, I would imagine they haven't prepared it yet, but my assumption is that there will be no impact to the overlapping taxing units, because we're not expecting to be generating increment in that new area necessarily. If we are, it would be relatively small as incremental increases in assessed value happen because of development. So if somebody were to get a riverfront liquor license and do a project there, build a restaurant, build a new bar or something, yes, there would be new assessed value and there would be some amount of increment. My guess is it would be relatively small.
Yeah, these aren't necessarily project-based, they're economic incentive-based.
So it should have no real true effect towards our tax base as a school system.
Right.
No, the Danco is us contributing money towards their project, and then the liquor license one's just purely creating a riverfront district so that they can apply to the state for a liquor license.
Thanks.
Aren't they open?
Good question.
They've been open, they've been asking for
So
some time.
confusing. You never know
Do
what
they don't have a license?
I don't believe
I
so.
just want to be able to report properly.
No, this won't do anything.
No wonder they want that, so.
If there was a bunch of investment in there, it'd be different.
Yeah. Any other do you have a question, Mike, or any other questions for Randy or Jeremy?
No.
George, I'd make a motion to approve declaratory resolution 2024-0501.
Okay, Joe has made a motion to approve the resolution.
I'll second it.
Is that you, Jack?
Yep.
Yeah, Jack seconded it. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Unanimous. So the resolution is passed. And then, let's see, We have the resolution for the disposition. You want to explain that, Jeremy?
Yeah, I'll turn this over to Randy as well, but obviously as part of our economic development incentive to Danco, we're going to be purchasing and disposing back to them their property. And that's what this resolution is going through, that process.
So again, the prior resolution you adopted added the Danco property to your acquisition list, so it gives you authority to acquire it, and that process will be completed at your June meeting. What we can do at the same time, we can begin the process to start the disposition process as well. We don't have to wait until June to start that. We can run them in tandem to save some time. And so this resolution actually starts that disposition process. And so to sell property by statute, the Redevelopment Commission has to have the property appraised and then approve an offering sheet. And so this resolution essentially approves the offering sheet. And it sets out in Exhibit B, A is just the description of the property, and then B is the offering sheet. And the appraised value is there, which is the average of the two appraisals. And the balance of that offering sheet is basically setting out the terms upon which the Redevelopment Commission, would dispose of the property. The intent, of course, to go through this process is that at the end, we're not expecting anyone to bid on it, not Danco particularly, and no one else, because anyone that would bid would have to essentially fulfill the requirements of the offering sheet. It's not a simple way, but it's a way to provide an economic incentive to a company, in this case Danco, so that the idea would be that ultimately we go through this process. We have to publish two notices a week apart. We were able then to come back in June. We're not expecting anybody to make an offer on the property, and at that point you would have the ability to sell the property back to Danco at the incentive price, which would be below this appraised value. And at the same time, you'll adopt a confirming resolution confirming that declaratory that will have added Danco to the property list. So I said a lot, and it's odd because we are running them in tandem. We're adding it to the list, but we're also going to start the process for disposition. Obviously, we won't dispose of it until we come back in June and do the confirming resolution, and then we'll have a resolution where you'll agree, if you adopt it, to dispose of it back to Danco for the agreed upon price.
So the minimum offering price is based on those two appraisals?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Right.
Our contribution to Danco for the project is $500,000 that we discussed, I think, a couple months ago. They spent a little over $800,000 on a new gas line. So this is our contribution for that gas line. That gas line runs right, it expanded all the way to our tech park. So there's some benefit to us to have that gas line in the ground.
Yeah.
And again, I would add, this is not an atypical, it's a pretty common incentive approach to provide an incentive to a company that a redevelopment commission will use. There are other more complicated ways of doing it, but we're trying to make it as simple as possible and as efficient, cheap as possible in terms of what work would need to be done. And so effectively you are having the property appraised, you are agreeing to buy it, but you're also agreeing then to dispose of it back. So after the meeting in June, assuming all the resolutions are adopted, we would simply have two quitclaim deeds. One would be for Danco to transfer the property to the commission, and the second would be then the commission quitclaiming it back for essentially no consideration to Danco. So when they quitclaim it to you, then you would be paying the agreed upon purchase price, the incentive. And that's how the company gets its incentive.
Any other questions about the resolution?
No, I think getting that gas service to them was critical to their investment, their expansion. And I'm fully supportive of what's been done for that reason. And as Jeremy said, it's going to, then that line come down.
Ties into Polk
Sylvia's,
Drive.
yeah, and comes down. So it will impact and benefit the tech park as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, hearing no questions, I will entertain a motion if somebody feels led to do it.
I'd be happy to make the resolution. Go ahead, you go
Okay, yeah,
first.
I move that we accept resolution 2024-0502.
I second it.
Okay, Jack has made a motion, Joe has seconded it. So, we have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those, there are no nays, so that is passed unanimous.
So the final resolution is to add the Warsaw Chemical property within the Winona Interurban. So we're basically amending that plan to add them to the acquisition list. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but kind of the first step in our process to look towards acquiring the Warsaw Chemical property.
I would just add that in its infinite wisdom, the General Assembly requires you to go through the exact same process to add the property to the acquisition list as if you were adding territory to your area. I could argue that it should be a shorter process, but in their wisdom, they want you to go through. So you have to go through the Plan Commission, the council, and back to you for a public hearing. And all we're doing to the Winona Interurban area is simply adding the Warsaw Chemical property to the acquisition list. That will allow you then to purchase it at some point in the future. But we do have to go through the steps under the statute to add it to the list. So effectively, you're amending the plan for the Winona Interurban area, but we're not adding any territory, we're not expanding it, we're not changing anything, we're just adding the property to the acquisition list.
I would say this has been under consideration for a long time. The city has had some benefits from our IFA loan that we've been able to mitigate some environmental concerns on that property. And so we are partners with them already. And having this opportunity, I think, Jeremy, this sets it up so that when the time comes, all those considerations can be made. Again, there's a big history on this, and it's, I appreciate you bringing this to the board.
Yeah, this is the first step in a long process, but we're actively pursuing the acquisition of that property and the relocation of their business so that we can continue to redevelop that area. Obviously, we've got the GACI project that should be starting this summer. We got the other apartment complex that's almost complete. So as we continue to redevelop that area, this is kind of the next piece of the pie.
And like you say, it's just a declaratory resolution, so in other words, it'll go to Plan Commission, City Council,
Yes.
come back here, public hearing, we'll have to approve it at that
There'll be
stage.
appraisals, contract to purchase, all of that stuff yet to come.
It's worth noting, you're not binding yourself to acquire the property. All you're doing is putting it on your acquisition list. It's pretty common for
Yeah.
redevelopment commissions to add property to the acquisition list but never acquire it. But certainly the intent here is somewhere down the road, assuming everything works out on the environmental side, et cetera, to acquire it. But that's not what you're doing today. You're just adding it to your acquisition list. Any approval or any actual acquisition action would take further approval by the Redevelopment Commission at some point in the future.
Okay, I just want to make, I'm not as familiar with it, so what's the plan and the purpose of even looking at acquiring Warsaw Chemical? Is it to move the business somewhere else and then make that more residential?
Not necessarily, but it is to relocate Warsaw Chemical. And then the intent right now is to try to create a technology incubator on that site. In conjunction with Grace College and the high school, maybe having some training high school workforce training, and then Grace College having their engineering facility in there.
Back to the TIF discussion, that area has been a underperforming TIF district, if you will, by nature of it being an old industrial site. Not just that, but the whole area. And I know the mayor will be working with us to continue to develop that area. And potentially that TIF district then starts to generate income, which has been again, it's been a long haul to get it to that point. But with the projects Jeremy mentioned, that district is on its way to being turned around. And not just in TIF increment, but got a lot of big plans for that area.
It's got a lot of potential.
Got a ton of potential.
Yeah.
It's in a good spot.
Okay, thank you.
A lot of pieces of the puzzle to put together, but
Big puzzle.
we're actively working on those pieces.
Okay.
I'd make a motion to accept resolution 2024-05-03.
Okay, Mike has made a motion.
Somewhere in the park. And I think they have it narrowed down to like 3 potential locations, but I don't think they've selected one yet.
Is that on the leaflet or pamphlet that they sent, the second page?
Yeah, it's kind of, it has a map, or it kind of has out, it's with the 3 blue areas, so it could be in one of those 3 areas. Central Park.
Jeremy, is that in our purview to get involved with projects like that, or are we, I'm just asking the question, are we better off to be involved in redevelopment?
Well, it's placemaking, which creates draw, which creates the ability to get developments like the Owens, the Millworks project. So yeah, I think it's definitely within our purview to do projects that are considered placemaking. The park area along Center Lake, where the first art piece was put, was all a redevelopment project.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole park area and that, so it's in the same function. So I do support this, and I wouldn't have brought it here if I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's would be a great addition to what we have going on downtown and adding those public art pieces. I'd like to see a couple more of them, and I've expressed that to them. Not just here, but we've got a couple of roundabouts I'd like to put some public art pieces in that the TIF could help do.
Is this money for this project coming from TIF money?
Yes. Come from the central TIF redevelopment allocation.
Last year, the Mayor's Public Art Commission got invited to participate in this creative convergence program that you see referenced on there. And we went down, and it was all about art as an economic development tool. It was a 2-day seminar. Justin, what did we get? I think it was $5,000 for a project.
So, yeah, we actually got $10,000, and so far the Arts Commission's raised about $23,000 for this project. The $10,000 from the state was specifically earmarked for the promotion of the public arts. So all of those are basically marketing dollars for this event, the events that will surround this art piece and the promotion of the arts in the community and the region. So that's why we can't take the money that we got from this convergence grant from the state and use it for the sculpture. So we were just, as we raised more money for this project, we were hoping that a contribution from this board would actually help spur some of that as well. So we'd be able to, if we got the artist under contract, we'd be able to hit the timelines and dates that were kind of set up for the Creative Convergence Grant. So hopefully that helps and doesn't muddy the waters further. But.
No, I was just pointing out that this project emanated from that Creative Convergence seminar. And there was 5 different communities our size that were involved in that. And it continues to grow the art in our community, which is, as Jeremy says, a placemaking, quality of place that really sets our community apart. Public art enhances walkability. I wish Mia Michelson was here from the Indiana Arts Commission, because she'd wow you with not only why it's important, but how it indeed is an economic development tool that your city can't ignore.
Yeah, it's incredible to hear how impactful art is throughout the economy as well in regions, so.
Yeah, I kind of undersold it, Mike, but I'm wholly in support of doing this. I wouldn't have brought it here if I wasn't. I'm a huge art fan, and like I've told Justin, I want to work on a couple of other larger scale projects that we can contribute to as we continue to grow that program.
And the idea with this piece, placing it near Central Park, is if you've ever been to Ravinia in Illinois, they have a concert venue, which we do a lot of concerts downtown, but it's a great way to meet up with people that are in the park. So if you're meeting with your friends, you can say, hey, meet me by the funky glass sculpture thing. So it really does help placemaking. It helps you navigate the park as well. When there's a lot of people out there, you can easily find your way around. So it was strategically placed there to kind of enhance that experience as well.
Warsaw Public Arts Commission has been meeting since we did the Walk and Wonder sculptures.
People are still
12
talking
years
about
ago.
that. People are still talking about it.
And the public support, financial support that the public gave to those 2, we actually had 2 different sculpture exhibits, led us to understand it, led me to understand how important not only was public art to me and the council and the commission, but to the entire community. And that Public Arts Commission has been meeting for a long time, and have made significant progress. I think there's a picture in here of some of Milt Holmgren's sculptures that are, one of them's now down on the trail, down the new trail in Central Park that Sasso's donated to, and there's another piece out at Krebs Trailhead Park, and
3 more to be installed this
Yes.
summer.
So it is a very active group. I would support this, and I would make the motion to accept this.
All right, we have a motion to accept the contract for the Art Commission.
I'll second that.
Michael will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. To Joe's point about what people see out of town in that park and all that, I know that the Sassos were, before they gave the $1 million, were wowed by this community and what we've done in Central Park and what we've done on the trails and stuff like that. And you know, contributes to the pavilion, getting Zimmer Biomet to contribute to that. I think the nicer that area looks, success breeds success.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. So that is approved. And I think up next we have the
Just have the claims.
claims.
We do have a few claims. We have NIPSCO 5355, 2 Indiana American Water claims, 23696 and 15186, all for the old Marsh building. Our monthly contribution to the lease agreement for West Hill, $42,000. Our monthly contribution to Peak Med's workplace at Ketco for $300. Property taxes for the Owens project, which go to the land trust part of Ketco, $23,382.04. $1 million Lake City Bank, that is a investment. So we work with Baker Tilly to invest funds that we are not going to use within a 12 to 18 month period. So that's what that is. Visa, $192. That was our go-to meeting for our digital, our virtual meetings. Barnes and Thornburg, $5,547.50 is for the ongoing work for all the resolutions you just approved. And then Baker Tilly, $1,727.50 is for the ongoing work for GACI and the Millworks project. County Treasurer, $21,835.60 is for the Marsh property taxes. And the reason why is the way they closed, although I tried to get them to include that in it didn't end up, so we're just paying taxes. So if you remember correctly, when we closed on the Marsh property, we didn't pay the full price, we paid that minus the taxes, so now we're just paying the taxes.
So it's their portion of the taxes.
Yes,
That
we just got it discounted off our
Yep.
price, so we're paying.
Okay.
And then 415.24. This is for the Buffalo Street. Oh, this is for the same thing. When we closed, they got discounted. When we closed on the Buffalo Street, discounted it on the price. So now we have to pay those taxes. And then the Radon Environmental, $9,320 is for the agreement that we did for the 2525 Durban Street for the environmental remediation for that project. And then the final that's been added, Steve's Hauling, $10,900 was we had sought quotes for demolition of the house we purchased on Buffalo Street. If you haven't been down there, it's gone. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are happy, and I'm happy because they stopped calling me about it. So that final claim is for $10,900.
So that's why that's.
Jeremy, I'm gonna bring this up. Can you go back to the, explain the Kedco property taxes for the Owens project?
Yeah, so when they were creating the whole land trust thing, they obviously skipped a few steps, and one of those steps is not filing for the tax exempt when they took ownership of that property, which then resulted in a lot of taxes to be paid. We are trying to keep the Millworks project on task. This was holding up the ICDA grant for the design work. Obviously, the developer didn't want to pay taxes from 2 years ago because he didn't own the property, and rightfully so. So we have agreed to pay the taxes so we can keep this project moving while at the same time stop incurring penalties, which it has occurred to date. So this is an easy way for us to clean this up and keep the project moving. In a nice way to say it.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions on any of the other claims?
I'd make a motion to accept claims as presented.
Okay, Mike has made a motion to approve the claims as presented. Are you, well, is he including Steve's?
Yes.
Is that all right?
Yes.
Including the one add-on at the end, yeah, Steve's.
I'll second.
Okay, Joe's seconded. So motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I had one question on that. The radon, is that, has to be monitored, but that's,
Yes.
there's no more big expenses, right? I mean,
I think that's not all of it, but that's the part that they've submitted so far. So I think,
Okay.
because we agreed up to like 46.
yeah, I was gonna say, that was,
So I think there's some more to come, but that was the first part they
First.
installed, I think, in the first building. They've done air testing in the first building. Building 2 is what they're called. I think they've got like 15 people that are gonna move into it. The test came back good, so
Yeah.
they still have to continue to monitor them, but the first tests that were done did come back good, so.
yeah. Okay. Well, any other business coming before the board? Any questions or anything?
No, we'll have a busy couple of months ahead of us, but with budgets and all that fun stuff coming up, so.
Are we gonna need to meet again this month?
I haven't got the budget stuff yet, so I'm gonna say no at this point, but
Okay.
that could change if we get some of the budget information.
Okay, keep us posted. Randy, thank you for your expertise and coming up. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor, for being here. So if there's no more,
Got no more?
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Randy. No one explains it like you.
I was gonna say when he said decades, that, because you, Joe, and yourself were